Want a bank that was ranked among the top in the nation for business banking? Whitney Bank has you covered with nearly 200 locations across the Gulf South. So stop by today. Learn more at HancockWhitney.com, member FDIC.
Major support for Out to Lunch is provided by the law firm of Jones Walker, established in 1937 with over 375 attorneys in offices throughout the U.S., providing a comprehensive range of services to a local, national, and international client base. JonesWalker.com. Additional support comes from Wyndham Garden Lafayette.
From Social on Johnson Street in Lafayette, we're out to lunch with Peter Raschuti. Peter Raschuti is Professor of Finance and Director of the award-winning Birken Road Reports. It's business, Acadiana style.
Hi, I'm Peter Raschuti. Welcome to Out to Lunch, Acadiana. How do I sound? No, really, be honest. When you hear my voice, do you think, oh, I like that guy? Or when you hear my voice, do you go, ugh, I hate that guy? Either way, it's the same voice, and there's a pretty good chance you don't know me. But that doesn't stop you from deciding whether or not you like me based on what I sound like, which is normal. We all reach conclusions because of sound. We say a person sounds nice, a song sounds romantic, or an idea sounds good. What we're really doing is attributing feelings and emotions to sounds. Jason Harrington designs and builds handcrafted amplifiers for music and voice. Jason's company, Lullaby Sound Design, marries modern acoustic science and old-fashioned vacuum tube technology to create unique, high-end sound equipment that's custom-built for musicians. Jason's business is right here in Lafayette. Jason, welcome to Out to Lunch.
Oh, it's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Larry G. Miller, who everyone calls Larry G., also creates wooden boxes that make sounds, Cajun accordions. Larry G's been making accordions under the name Bonti for 37 years. He's built and sold over 1,200 accordions. Larry G is also one of the very few people who can make traditional triangles for Cajun music out of the tines of pitchforks. And among his other accomplishments, Larry G is one of the founders of CFMA, the Cajun French Music Association. Larry G, I've been trying to get you on the show for a long time. I'm glad we finally pulled it off. Welcome Out to Lunch.
Well, happy to be here. Okay.
This is great. Now, Larry G and Jason, besides both making boxes that create sounds, you have strangely similar business biographies, though some years apart. Larry G, you spent 22 years in the Acadia Parish school system. You made it all the way to principal. Congratulations. Before quitting 27 years ago to build accordions full time. Now, Jason, you were a 7th grade teacher before quitting in 2005 to focus all your time and energy on Lullaby Sound Design. So let's start by talking about leaving the safety net of a job with steady income, benefits, for the uncertain entrepreneurial world of making instruments and sound equipment for musicians. Did you guys have a business plan, investors funding? What kind of forward thinking was involved to leave the teaching world and be full-time music makers here?
I think for me, one thing that happened was the music making portion of my life grew to a point that it couldn't exist with the teaching portion of my life. One of them had to go, and I was at the point where I couldn't do either one of them very well because there was a little too much of each to do. For 20 or so years, I've been kind of doing amplifier work and playing music and things, and it's probably the largest part of who I am as a person. So when that started to finally get some traction and started to grow, it was very hard for me to push it back down in the box.
Right. Was it scary going out to this one?
It still is scary.
Still scary.
So it was extremely scary, but I had a lot of support from my family and from the music community. So it's been a great learning experience.
Now, Larry G, you probably were making accordions while you were teaching and being a principal, right?
I did start the last year I was a principal, and I saw an opportunity to go into business with my brother, sort of in between the school and the accordion making. For about 9 years, I went into business with my brother, and then he became terminally ill, was sold out to somebody else, and by then I had been doing accordions as a hobby, and so I just knew what I wanted to do about the time we sold out.
Okay, good timing.
So then I had, I went into business to double my salary, and we accomplished that. It was kind of messy work, but we had a house full of teenagers to educate, so so that worked out, and but the hobby just kept drawing me because I just wanted to create these instruments,
And you've brought one of the instruments with you.
Mhm.
This is both of you do this. I guess you create custom. You're creating custom accordions for somebody that wants a specific look.
Yes, they're partly customized from the standpoint of cosmetic, and of course, the buyer chooses the key that they want. Because these are keyed instruments like harmonicas, and so.
So how many different keys can you get an accordion in?
Well, I have built 11 different ones. I never did get a call for an F sharp, but I've done G sharp
after
and
a
E
show like
flat
this,
and
you could get lots of
all
calls.
of those. And so different musicians have, but there are some popular keys like C and B flat, and Cajun music is the two most popular. And Zydeco, it's B flat and A. With
So
the
this
most
is
popular.
why when I go to a concert, I see a musician have more than one accordion up on stage with
That's correct. Of these, piano accordion is chromatic. You just need one, but these are about 1/3 the cost of a piano accordion in the same quality level and same features, and so you can afford to buy 3 of them, and each one plays in 2 keys. That gives you 6 keys that your vocalist can choose from. If he can't sing that song in one of those 6 keys,
Really?
you get another singer.
it. Get another singer.
You're
That would
fired.
be the.
Unless he's the leader of the band.
Right, can't get a. He owns the stuff. So they. But Jason, what about yourself? You make these amplifiers specifically for specific musicians. Now, what is it? Is it the instrument they play? Like you would.
It's a combination of things. It's oftentimes people play multiple instruments, and in the amplifier market, just about everything, at least in terms of high quality tube amplifiers, is marketed or is manufactured with guitarists in mind.
Okay.
However, there's not a whole lot out there for people who play fiddle, who play accordion, who play steel guitar, and we've seen a lot of people in our area in the cultural music going to high-powered solid-state amplifiers so that they could keep their steel guitar clean, that they can keep their vocal clean without getting that distorted signal.
But that doesn't work for the fiddle and
It doesn't. Well, it will. However,
Right.
the problem with it comes is that you don't get all the character, the charm, and life that you get from a tube amplifier. The kind of personality and the kind of quirkiness where the amplifier actually responds back to what you're putting into it. It's just a different kind of feel when you're playing it. It's much more of an organic kind of amplifier in that it responds back to you when you play it. So I'll make amplifiers for people who play multiple instruments where they'll have each channel specifically voiced to reproduce that instrument accurately. And if they sing along with it, they'll have a channel as well where they can plug their microphone into and their voice will be reproduced
But
accurately.
Jason, you're a young guy, but you seem to have created a product here that's sort of old school, new school, right? Why I haven't heard about vacuum tubes in a long time.
Right.
What is it that grabs you there?
Well, my background is actually aside from teaching in music, is in sculpture. So
That's right. You studied that at UL.
I studied
right?
that
Okay.
at UL, and while I was studying sculpture at UL, I would go to the library quite often and spend a ton of time up there. And they have a remarkable section in the Dupree Library of old vacuum tube engineering books from the 30s, 40s, 50s. And aside from the information, I fell in love with the diagrams, the drawings, the whole aesthetic of the technology. So I started to try to incorporate some of that into my sculptures. And that quickly formed a bridge between me playing music and me creating sculptures. And in there came, the vacuum tube circuits. And
Wow.
it kind of grew from there.
Hey, now, can I ask you? And maybe you can't say this or not, but are there musicians we know that are using your equipment? Like some Cajun musicians that are using your
Well, like Cheryl Cormier and a number of those musicians, Zydeco musicians like Gino Delafosse.
Oh, sure, yeah.
So we all of the builders, well-known builders, have got their fans, and each one handles a little bit different, has a little different feel. You can't help but have that happen because this is all handmade, so there's no machine tools that can crank out everything the same way. So anyway, so our fingerboards will vary a little bit. The bass box will vary, the feel, maybe the tuning variation, and so I've got some musicians who swear by mine, and we've got some musicians who swear by some of the other builders, and that's normal.
Mr. Miller, would you agree that I would say that most musicians I meet are one-of-a-kind kind of people?
That's true.
I wouldn't say Gino Delafosse is like any other accordion player, and in that, I'll bet he really appreciates the uniqueness of the accordions that you can make for him.
Each well-known musician is unique in their own way, in their own styles, and what they prefer. They're very picky about what feels good and what they hear and that kind of thing. It's part of the artisan scene of with the music production. So so we've got and of course I sometimes tell my competitors that if everybody was coming after my accordions, there's no way I could build enough to supply the demand. So it's good that musicians have different choices, and we don't worry about that. We know that something suits them better than another shop. That's fine. We can still be friends.
That brings me to a part that I had read about you, which is that you build these accordions in batches. Now, why and how does that work?
Simply because all accordions have got more parts in them than any other musical instrument. Even in a grand piano, if you count all the little parts that have to be made or bought, installed, and dealt with, even the little lead pins and these corners and just internal parts, a lot of.
Where do you find vacuum tubes? Are you driving down the highway looking for old TVs that are being thrown out on the side of the road?
Sometimes I do. I have quite a pile. I call it the amplifier graveyard. Where it literally is a room full of old amplifiers, and the reason is I have a better chance of finding a high quality specific part in one of those amplifiers than I do oftentimes in a parts store or even through a website, because the quality of the components has changed over the years so drastically that oftentimes those old parts, you can't replace it with a new component that's going to have the same quality, particularly in tubes.
Now, both of you, were you self-taught? I mean, where does someone learn to make these amazing things?
Well, the first one to start making the replicas of the old German-made accordions was in 1950s. Sidney Brown, not a good craftsman, but he's a good musician, and he proved it could be done. And to kind of follow up on that question,
where was he from? Is he down?
He was born in Church Point, lived near Iota, moved to Lake Charles. When he was a young man, and lived there all his adult life till he died. But he was a good musician, so he proved we could make replicas of them, because all of the factories were caught on the East German side. We couldn't get the good ones anymore. All we could get is that Horner was the only one that survived the East-West division in Germany. All of the factories were on the east side, except Horner was in the west side. So we could only get those from Horner, and Horner made a little Volkswagen, not a professional model. The person who invented these accordions was Frederick Bushman in 1822, and he called it an harmonica, Harmonica, and then 10 years later he develops the mouth harp, and they called it a moon harmonica. So a lot of the Germans still call this instrument an harmonica, and then the moon harmonica, So whatever, and this was the first accordion that was invented. Then the concertina came, a guy named Wheatstone in England, about 10 years, about the time the harmonica was developed.
Right.
Then 1862 is when Paulo Soprano in Italy invents the piano accordion. So these things were all over the Western world until the piano accordion became invented in the 60s. And it wasn't until about 1880s before the piano accordion was fully developed and accepted by musicians, about the time that the German immigrants introduced this instrument to Cajun and Creole musicians in Louisiana. We are the only ones that stayed hooked on this instrument.
Ah.
Everybody else went to the piano accordion.
You know, when in reading your biographies, the one thing that would grab me is that both of you want your. Let's see. I guess in your case, is it your grandson you taught
My
to
grandson,
make these? And
Jay
yours
Miller.
is, you hope your stepson goes
Correct.
into this. This is pretty great. So you don't want this skill to just die out. That's pretty great.
No, I mean, I think a lot of what we do, and I'm sure Mr. Millerfeld's the same way. It's a labor of love in doing it, in keeping the craftsmanship alive, keeping the manufacturing alive, and being a part of the music community by building these tools for them. And it's so much more than just a business or a way to make a profit, I
Yeah.
suppose.
And I couldn't make a living and educate the 6 kids that we had if I was an accordion builder. But I was past that when I got into it. So,
You get
you
a
know,
second act. This
it
is pretty
worked out,
great.
yeah.
Now, we've never had this happen at the show, but out of nowhere, your instruments have arrived. This is
Well-
pretty great. Now, Jason, you brought along a guitar,
Correct?
and which you did not build, I would assume.
I did not
Okay,
build
just
this
checking this. And I think
I
in
didn't
the
put the strings on it.
and the background, I hear Larry
I
G.
think we've never played together, so have you played a little Cajun music?
Yes, sir.
You could pick up on the chords?
Certainly. What key are you
I'm
in?
going to play this one called Midnight Waltz. It sounds a lot like an old European ballroom waltz, you know, that we put Cajun words to. I'm not going to sing it, but it.
That
Thank
was
you.
awesome. That was so great.
That's good that he can pick it up that quick. We've never played together.
That's a beautiful sounding accordion.
Thank you.
And,
It's a C.
C.
I guess you gathered that.
Larry,
Picking
you
up the
brought
chord.
this as special because how old is this accordion?
This one here?
Yeah.
It's about 2 hours old.
Just finished that one.
I finished it at about 10 o'clock.
This is actually what you said going to leaving the state, right? This is going to a customer out of state?
Yeah, to go to North Carolina. He ordered a C that plays in C and G, and he ordered the D that plays in D and A. So the D is going to be finished sometime next week, and I'm going to ship them both in the same box to the. He's a bluegrass musician, bluegrass and country musician. He's a banjo player, and he's always wanted one of these for the last 15 years. So he decided he made enough money, he was going to buy one. So buy a couple of them, and so we've got some Cajun bands scattered throughout the 48 states, and a couple in Alaska, and one guy in Hawaii who's learning, you know, and that kind of thing. So we've got some musicians who play Cajun and Creole and Zydeco worldwide,
And that's
in the Western world mainly.
Yeah.
But even in Japan, I've got 7 of these in Japan. I don't know what they're doing with them, but it's fascinating. It's quite a cultural ocean to jump for people who are totally unrelated to English or French or any kind of European languages, and to latch on to the music and learn how to play it. And they're so tenacious. They learn every single note perfect, and they learn how to sing. They mimic as close as they possibly can, which is a lot of times pretty darn good. But they're very tenacious. They'll
Yeah.
work and work for just countless hours to learn every little nick and cranny of the music. And
Well,
but
I should ask both of you this. How did these people find you? How do you, this isn't the kind of thing you put on a
Well-
billboard.
yeah, but recordings and CDs, and even in Tokyo there's a radio station that plays country and Cajun and bluegrass and all, and they're listening.
And not to mention, we have quite a few I think of them as cultural ambassadors, just musicians from our area who carry our music all over the world. So these people from Japan and China and Russia and you name it, they're looking back here because we have musicians from here taking this culture there and representing it in a way that's turning all eyes back
And
to
what
us.
might they do? Might they ask those musicians, where'd you get that accordion? Where'd you get that amplifier?
I think sometimes they do, and then if they call in the Acadiana region, I'm sure somebody could find either me or Mr. Miller pretty easily.
Well, I've got a grandson, Blake Miller, who is the accordion and fiddle player in a band called the Revelers. And in 2.5 years, they were nominated for a Grammy. And so they've traveled to all parts of Europe and North America, and they've gone into Mexico and several other places, never Japan yet. But anyway, and so where they go, I mean, people are attending these festivals and events, and they're listening. And sometimes it strikes them, and they want to buy more CDs or maybe buy instruments. And
Let me ask you guys this: is you don't make that many because of the nature of these things. What do these amps cost, for instance?
Amps usually run between 2,400 up to around 4,000 for the multiple channel kind of things. They're all point-to-point wiring, which means that each component, each piece is put in one at a time. There's no circuit boards involved in any way, and that goes into my concept is like I can get an amplifier that was made in the 40s or 50s, and given a half an hour and a little bit of time, more often than not, you can get it back running. Because they were built to be repaired. They weren't built to be replaced.
But today,
But today, it's a totally different story. So that's kind of what we referred to the labor of love earlier. It's I think of my amplifiers as being heirloom quality. It's the kind of thing that it's not going to be something you're going to replace in 10 years. It's going to be something that grows and changes with you for your whole life, just like a good fiddle or a good acoustic instrument would.
and I've got how much do these accordions cost?
well, in our case, we don't have to buy some expensive vacuum tubes, and reeds are newly built and high quality today that are still going. So there's a few electronic, accordions that don't use reeds, but it's not the same thing. So they'll run anywhere from 2,000 to 3,000, depending on who builds them and what features they'll have and that kind of thing. When I started, it was hit and miss and trial and error. And we learn from each other, and it's kind of a unique story in that because of the Cajun culture, not as much as the Amish, but we did have some interdependency when we were speaking French among ourselves. And I grew up that way. My parents spoke only French, and I had to learn English when I started school.
You're doing a good job with English, by the way, Larry.
So the point is, there was a cultural interdependency. So these early guys, and even today, it still carries on. We share each other's technology. And as a result, now that we look back in the last 20, 25 years, we look back and we realize that it was a slow but effective research and development project. Whereas if my shop was in downtown New York City, or maybe even closer than New York City, if I was in business building accordions like that, you bet your rear end I would not share my technology with my competitor. But as a result, they all get better. So we buy the bellows and reeds from Italy, and they make good accordions too, but they don't make many of these. They don't pay as much attention. For us, it's the only one we build. It's a passion, it's a labor of love, and we share each other's technology. So we make the best diatonic accordion than in the world because of that cultural, reliance on each other.
Well, I'm glad you're both here. Larry G. Miller, you spend your professional music life making warm acoustic sounds. Jason Harrington, you spend your professional life making amplified sound as warm and acoustic as possible. You're both coming at music from different places and from different generations, but you have an awful lot in common, not the least of which is a tremendous amount of talent Thank you both for taking the time to join me on Out to Lunch.
Oh, it's been
All
so
right.
great to be here.
My guests on Out to Lunch today have been Larry G. Miller, founder and owner of Bonti Accordions, and Jason Harrington, founder and owner of Lullaby Sound Design. You can find out more about Larry G. and Jason's respective boxes that make sounds by following the links in our websites, krvs.org and itsacadiana.com. The producer of our show is Grant Morris. Our technical producer is Eric Merle, and Christian is our researcher. Our theme song, Encore Monsieur Nice Guy, is written by Mitch Foreman and performed by Mitch Foreman and Andre Michaud. Our Acadiana business consultants are Pete Prados from Innovate Acadiana, Zach Barker from The Opportunity Machine, and Dr. Blake Escaday. Today's show is recorded live over lunch at Social Southern Table and Bar in Lafayette. Social is open 6 days a week for lunch and dinner with brunch on Sundays. If you want to know what we look like, and we are a particularly good-looking group of people here, you can find photos from this show on our websites and Facebook page. These photos today were taken by Gwen O'Quan. You can get the show as a podcast. You can listen to past shows. You can keep up with us on all kinds of social media by going to our websites. It's acadiana.com and krvs.org. Support for Out to Lunch Acadiana comes from Wyndham Garden Lafayette. Located off Pinhook near Calise Saloon, Wyndham Garden Lafayette has 290 sleeping rooms and 14,000 square feet of meeting space to accommodate groups from 10 to 500 for meetings, conferences, weddings, and high school reunions. Additional support comes from ABiz Magazine and AcadianaBusiness.com, the essential information source for business decision makers throughout the One Acadiana region. Out to Lunch is a production of INO Broadcasting for itsacadiana.com and KRVS 88.7 FM. I'm Peter Raschuti. Thanks for joining me. I look forward to meeting you again next week around the lunch table for more business, Acadiana style, on Out to Lunch.
Major support for Out to Lunch is provided by the law firm of Jones Walker, established in 1937 with over 375 attorneys in offices throughout the U.S., providing a comprehensive range of services to a local, national, and international client base. JonesWalker.com. Additional support comes from Wyndham Garden Lafayette.
Want a bank that was ranked among the top in the nation for business banking? Whitney Bank has you covered with nearly 200 locations across the Gulf South. So stop by today. Learn more at HancockWhitney.com. Member FDIC.